Hello, hello, everyone. A very rare Safi on air. I'm surprised
Oh,
you're
I'm off. I'm out of here.
you're great.
Hello, goodbye.
Well, welcome everybody. As usual, I'll give everybody a minute or two to roll in because I know some people like to kick off a little bit late, but that's cool. And Safi, since you're my only person to talk to, at least live, you can see my grow client with CloudRadial.
I can.
All right. So
Everything looks to be in working order.
That's what we like.
And you've got quite a few people online now, so
Let's
give it a couple of seconds.
I think so. Yeah. Again, it's like
go ahead. Let's get started.
The beauty of recorded stuff. All right.
I know.
Well, welcome everybody to. Actually, this is the final one in our 4 series of Land, Onboard, Manage, Grow, which is a whole strategy around CloudRadial. Obviously, this is per the screen, the grow side of things. This is colloquially, we're going to call this the QBR or the client review meetings, whatever you want to call it. We're really focused on the kind of last mile of existing clients and stuff, and how we're going to handle that within CloudRadial. I, of course, am Ricky Cecchini, the Director of Product Services here, aka one of the dudes who does most of the consulting setup running. So we're going to do a lot of hands-on technical stuff. So for those that are not familiar, that are jumping in on this one, to take a look at CloudRadial, just a brief thing about what it is. We're a SaaS solution for MSPs, and we are really an integrated account management platform and a client portal. And the whole point of what we do is we take kind of everything that you guys do as MSPs, as service providers, as Microsoft CSPs, and we're basically going to put that in front of the clients in a way that makes sense to help you reduce some costs across different client-facing stack tools, hopefully improve some sales, definitely improve your client retention by giving them something to actually sink their teeth into, get a little bit of stickiness going, and just get better awareness of your brand for the whole thing. And we're going to really focus on the transparency angle of everything. And like I said, this is the 4th webinar of a 4-part series in which we covered Land, Onboard, Manage, Grow, because like I just said, CloudRadial being a platform that really covers the whole spectrum of that client experience with account management, with a lot of automation processes, it really is intended to take it from start to finish. So previously we talked about all the processes from the very first prospect meeting and how you can present a client-facing portal and all things you have to offer to them, to how you onboard them effectively, to how you manage them day to day. And of course, today we're talking about the growth phase, right? Where it's kind of that meeting time where we want to kind of show what we have to offer in the future and roadmap out some stuff for the clients. So this webinar specifically is for those that are looking to create those standardized processes for review meetings. And of course, again, we're going to talk about this in depth, but the gist of the situation is we're fully aware that CloudRadial is, of course, again, a client portal. It is a good function as a VCIO platform, as a account management tool, but there's always going to be different people that come into this webinar, right? Some of you guys are looking to build a process from scratch. Maybe you've had a couple failure to launches where you tried some stuff, you fell back down, or you're currently using something, you just want something a little bit easier and you want to hybridize everything. There's a little bit for everyone here. I think we can really hit a nice middle ground that should work for pretty much everybody watching it. We're going to take a very non-aggressive, me or nobody else strategy. I think it ends up kind of making our clients very happy. We'll see that. Again, we're going to really focus on how to build a QBR processes using either nothing that you have or everything that you have and focusing it on one. We're going to look at something that I think is the most important part of this whole webinar, which is not so much the delivery, but rather the pre-thought, which is the optimization of your service offerings in the first place to help clients understand what you're even talking about, why you recommend stuff, and where you're coming from. And again, CloudRadial is really suited to make that discussion easy to prep for, easy to deliver, and makes a whole lot of sense. And then lastly, this is a good webinar for those that have kind of heard about CloudRadial, maybe want a demo of how it works, want to see some of the core mechanics, which again, we will be doing only about 5 to 10 minutes of this PowerPoint to give some context, but we're going to launch into the actual tenant that we've been working on. So the main question for today is, how can CloudRadial help you actually grow your clients? And when we say grow, we're really talking about keeping them engaged month over month, year over year, right? Not just letting this stagnate, not just collecting a paycheck every month, because obviously that puts you in a situation where they're going to start asking questions about why they're paying that much. Either the fires are still going because there's lots of work to do, or maybe there's no fires because you put them all out, right? So there almost has to be some kind of, if not mobility, at least visibility to show them what is going on in the background. And this is going to be focused on giving them as much value as possible. So the main theme, I think, we've been kind of doing this every webinar, is to kind of focus around the productization strategy. And I'm not actually sure that's a word, but it's something we use a lot, and I think it makes sense. When we're saying productization, we're really talking about how to take, again, something that is relatively nebulous, like managed services or managed security, that is obviously a word or two words, but they can mean a lot of different things to different MSPs and different clients, and sometimes it means nothing to clients. So how do we take something like that and make it a thing? How can we make that digestible? How can we make the client understand that you have this, you do not have this, and here's why you need this added to this, right? A lot of times with these different packages of stuff, it's very difficult to differentiate, and it's very difficult to explain to a client what they're missing and why, right? So we're going to try to frame that in the context of a greater strategy. And perhaps even more important than that, while this is again very, very important, we're also going to give ourselves room, breathing room for the client to speak back to us, right? We're not going to use these QBRs as lectures. Obviously there's some sales components to them, but we're not going to treat them as they are a sales meeting. We're going to treat them as proper consultation sessions to hopefully just make the data speak for itself as much as possible. So we'll see that as well. So something we've been talking about, and I actually first talked about this way back during the LAND webinar, which is the very first one. We were talking about the idea of the core business pillars. And this is something that CloudRadial has kind of built into its methodology. It's kind of weaved in everywhere. And it's not something we slam in your face all that often. I mean, it's certainly visible, but it's not something we bring up too much, but I think it's worth mentioning. So I keep saying these framing your services or productizing, and what I'm really talking about is trying to turn something that, again, is very technical and making it very simple to correlate to business drivers. So what we're looking at on the screen right now really should be more of a pyramid. If anyone's familiar with some psychology stuff, very similar to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Human beings kind of have a need list that they need to kind of grow properly. Similar idea in business. So what we want to try to do, at least subconsciously, is take all of the services that we've been offering, that you're going to offer, all the projects and stuff, and try to make them kind of point upwards towards a bigger goal. So the bottom level stuff that is very, very simple, and I think a lot of you guys offer, which is totally good. I mean, it's fundamental, is stuff that functions as efficiency, right? Managing the workstations, managing the servers, upgrading laptops, that kind of stuff. And that stuff's really important. But once you get past that, once the stuff is updated, once things are good to go, what next? Well, maybe you want to focus on some security, right? You got to secure those devices. And then once those are secure, what next? Well, maybe we probably want to focus on some productivity here and continuity, compliance. So it kind of works its way up. And designing your strategy around a concept like this enables you to always have something to talk about, which is an issue for a lot of MSPs, because aside from just setting up that QBR and doing that meeting, most people run into the problem where when they get to the meeting, once everything's been decided yes or no, and we kind of stand still, you're done. There's no reason to have a QBR. And again, that's not inherently dangerous, but it's not a very engaging conversation for the client, right? You never want them to feel like you've topped out, maxed out. In a real business relationship, especially with as much technology as it evolves, as needs change, there should always be the next level. And something like this is going to help you kind of keep an objective in mind, so you can always help them kind of get to the next level of their business to really help them scale. So we're going to think bigger than just getting to a maintenance level of stuff. So if that all seems very nebulous, let's talk about it even simpler, because I have a breakdown, right? To get a QBR to really land, I'm going to call them QBRs, but remember I'm referring to any kind of business review meetings. We're really going to be answering one of three questions at any given time, ideally more than one. This is the simple version. We're going to help them figure out what we're doing and how it's going to make them save money, make money, or reduce their risk, right? Because ultimately a client doesn't want to meet with you. I mean, maybe they do for friendliness, of course, but they don't want to meet with you unless you have something of value, right? They're probably busy just as you are. You don't want to take time out of their day and vice versa unless you have something of value to add. And we know you do. We work with MSPs all the time, so we have full awareness of the solutions and how they help impact business positively, but turning that very complex thing into something simple that can help them understand that you're going to directly correlate this problem with saving them money is the key. And you're going to have really, really good QBRs in CloudRadial if you can do that. So in general, how are we going to help you succeed? We're going to email you a PDF guide of this entire conversation. We've been doing this for every single webinar. Every single one of these webinars is actually based off of our Land, Onboard, Manage, Grow guides that we've actually written. As a follow-up, usually I would say, oh, catch our next webinar in the series. We're obviously going to be completing the series as of this one, but there is going to be a Domotes webinar tentatively set for the 27th of May as part of our Better Together series. So we're going to be talking about our integration with them and how that's really killer. And then we're also going to be, of course, adding additional resources as they come up, right? We're going to be having discussions with the community, with actual people. So as we come up with additional ideas, additional like deliverables that can help make your Cloud Radio portal even better. We're going to be posting those up there. And then anything else, if you're missing the context of past stuff like land, onboard, and manage, that'll be on YouTube and should be available for you whenever you feel like. So very last bit, I say this every single time, but I will be covering a lot of the concepts, and I may dive into technicality here and there, but for the most part, I won't be covering click this button, do this thing. I want to focus more on the high level scale of what we're trying to accomplish. And for all that stuff, the nitty gritty, don't forget that there is the Academy. That is our training site. You can get to it from academy@cloudradio.com. And if you're, if you have a tenant, if you're already kind of up and running and you don't know how to get to it, make sure you go to radials.io/training. You can provision yourself and any other user to get into that Academy, of course, free of charge, even if you're in trial, and that'll show you all the nitty gritty aspects. But enough about the preamble. Why don't we actually get started and take a look at some QBR stuff and see what we're talking about. All right, so as we've been doing for the most part, we've been talking about the context of setting up an entire tenant in this one tenant that I'm looking at right now, this LOMG tenant right here. So what we've been doing for the entirety of the webinars is we started again with the land thing, and I actually want to circle back to that because that's really important. In the land webinar, we talked about how you can take a portal that may not be connected to a PSA, it may not be connected to Office, so functionally it has nothing to do with a prospect. And we talked about setting up a client within CloudRadial to be part of that kind of a dummy prospect list. So in this company, this tenant, I have a couple of dummy prospects, which are my Jeff's company and Ricky's shop. So what we had done for this one is we had kind of staged up the portal. We showed them all the different features that happened. But the most important takeaway from that is that whenever you do this meeting with them, whenever you show them the client portal, you have set the precedent and you have promised them visibility throughout the entire thing. And every webinar since that first one, we've been delivering on that. We've been delivering the ability to say, get those line of business apps customized. We've been delivering the ticketing capability. We've been building their service catalog and customizing that. We've been doing their courses and so on and so forth. So we've been building a lot of that stuff. And the entirety of the time, obviously not in my demo account, but we've been also theoretically been adding to it. So when we talked about it a little bit during last time's managed thing, we were talking about setting up things like the policies or the reports, where we talked about you can take reports from any tool and forward them into CloudRadial's report archives, in which each one of these folders you can spin up, have their own email addresses. So the whole point of this was that you could take any report, forward it in there, and turn CloudRadial into a repository to set up the conversation. So we've really promised a whole lot to the client at the very beginning, and slowly we've been delivering. And this is a really exciting webinar because we're going to actually reap the rewards, right? We were going to actually act on all those things and determine how we can do something with them. So where do we actually start? Now, when we talk about the QBR in CloudRadial, and we want to know how it actually is run, we're mainly going to be talking about the ability to go into a given client's feature set over here, and it's mainly run in this planner section right here. And this planner is probably pretty similar to pretty much everything you've ever seen, because I think the concept is universally understood to be easy. It makes sense to non-technical people. People understand how it works, and they kind of expect it to work the way it will. So it's something that shouldn't require a lot of rocket science. And again, we know that a lot of times people running this kind of stuff will be more of your account manager, non-technical roles. So we didn't want to make this whole convoluted thing. So compared to a lot of stuff we've been covering, this one's going to be like refreshingly simple. So where it's not simple and where a lot of MSPs struggle, so this is going to take some thinking power, is how do we present the initial batch of stuff? So from a context perspective of how this is intended to be run, it's very, very simple. CloudRadial takes this very simplistic approach on purpose because we want to make sure that it is baseline simple. So we've got a recommended column, and you can see that there's a bunch of these cards under here, which are supposed to be like your kind of like your core stack of services or your initial set. Past that, we've got these 4 quarters, these 4 columns over here that are based off of the calendar year quarters. And then past that, we have an installed column, or colloquially also called completed. So again, without any context, you can pretty easily see that you've got stuff that you can put into quarters to let them know when that stuff's happening, and then you've got a column to say when that stuff's completed. So at a base level, logistically, it is no more difficult than saying, hey, we have managed services and we are already completing that for you, right? So this is the dead most simple, easy way to start off with CloudRadial, because, or at least the QBR with CloudRadial, because what you were able to do in a pinch is not only deliver a portal that delivers on intranet reporting capabilities, but now from a greater service level, the client has the visibility and transparency to see what they are paying for with you, right? They're able to understand that this is a siloed thing that I'm getting, and these are things that you can deliver to them that you're not getting, which many MSPs struggle to showcase that in a way that is casual and easy to understand as time goes on, right? You may add new services, and how would you let your clients know about that unless you're actively, say, marketing to them, which maybe you are, but it's always nice to have that ability directly within their portal. So when we go in here, really these cards, the anatomy of these cards is very, very simple. You can see what's happening is each one of these cards is color coded, and they have a little line up top here. So this one's efficiency, and this one's collaboration and decision making. And back to what I was saying at the PowerPoint, we're still sticking with that theme of not just saying you're going to get Meraki's. You're going to talk about, even if it's subconsciously, how those Meraki's are going to affect their business in a way that makes sense and they care about, right? So this is not just saying Meraki's because Meraki's are good. It's saying this is going to improve your efficiency. Why do we want to do a HIPAA compliance assessment? Is it because we're obsessed with HIPAA? No, it's because we want to make sure that you're compliant. That's something you're working towards. Or why do we want Office 365? Is it because we want Office? No, it's because you want to improve the productivity of your business. So these cards, you can customize the titles and the little descriptions there. And as you click on the cards, you have the full capability to customize what actually goes inside of the card as far as description. And most of the sample ones you're going to see, anyone who has a tenant or even a trial tenant, you're going to have the exact set I have up here. These are the sample ones, just to give you an idea of how you can set them up, right? So you can see that we've got a very simple thing with a couple of bullet points, a little bit of details in here. And the purpose of this is that if imagine you're an account manager or just someone trying to run these kind of different QBRs or meetings, if you're talking to the client like I'm talking to you guys, and I'm trying to have a decent conversation, I want to have something that is both easy to reference. So if I want to say, hey, we want to try to do our managed service agreement for you. Okay, it's nice for you to be able to pull this up, but also when the meeting is over, the client has the ability to click on that and see it later. So you don't have to leave like a leave behind or anything. It's all digital in your portal. It's accessible to them 24/7. So that's a really big thing for us. So as we go through, right, again, the core mechanics of this couldn't be easier. We're able to drag stuff through and say, hey, this goes over here, this goes over here, right? And we kind of move stuff over. So we're able to showcase our different completed options, and we're able to even put things in the quarters to show them that things are upcoming. I hate to interrupt the webinar, but I'm getting a message saying I'm having poor network connection. Can you hear me okay still? Maybe not. Maybe it is. I'll keep going then. All right,
no, I can hear you. I can hear you fine.
Okay, cool. Maybe I'm imagining GoToWebinar is just messing with me to screw my flow up. That's cool.
Hold on, let me see. A lot of we've got a couple of people. Felicia and Hamid said they're having problems, but we can hear you. Yeah, they can hear you. Thanks for letting me know, y'all.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got the message just popped up saying like network problems. I don't have any Wi-Fi issues. I'm not sure if GoToWebinar is having problems, but just heads up. Let me know if I cut out every now and then.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Thanks. All right, so the whole point of this is we're kind of splitting up these services and we're giving them a light roadmap. Now, again, this isn't so much important as what you first put into the entire situation in the first place. So what do you start off with? And this is, again, the difficult part because the framing of these services is very difficult. And between me and you guys, I think you guys can do a lot better than even the sample set, because this is something that is super, super difficult for a vendor in general to kind of guess what you have. And like I just said before, we want to try to productize that offering. So it's not even that simple as what I'm doing right now. Right now, you can see I'm moving around these cards saying managed services or Meraki and Office. But to really land with the client and to really differentiate, which is something that a lot of you struggle with, you're going to need to put a little bit more effort into even branding the services. And what that really means is maybe just naming it, right? Because this comes down to the idea of what does, for example, a managed service really mean? What does managed security really mean? You guys may do it one way. I mean, every single one of you that are listening to this and the future people that will listen to this, I guarantee you don't do it the exact same way. Even if you have the exact same tools in the stack, you deliver it differently. That's part of your IP. That's part of your own expertise, your team members, all that kind of stuff. So it's almost unfair to you guys to be able to put managed services up here because that is obviously custom to you. So we're big proponents of naming your own stuff, and that's part of the productization strategy. Because I guarantee you my digital efforts managed services, you know, if I have managed services plus or digital manage or whatever it may be, is going to be something that is not comparable versus ABC Co's managed stuff, right? Because purely from even like an SEO perspective, they're two completely different things. if I were to Google managed services right now, I'm going to get about 1,000 different sites offering the same thing. And to an end user, they have no idea, right? They see the same thing. They could see the cheapest one and go, I get managed services for $100 a seat. That guy wants $1,000 a seat. How do I know the difference? Unless you get them into something this detailed, which is tough, right? So when we talk about this productization strategy, we're really talking about how you even start off with the correct starting lineup, right? And keep in mind that I'm obviously using this with a bunch of these kind of siloed roles, managed services, managed security. Some of you guys, I mean, I talk to a lot of people that don't do it that way, right? A lot of you guys offer like a singular package of stuff that has everything included, or maybe, you know, there's a couple different variances in there. So there's some logistics in how it can be handled. But again, I want to state that CloudRadial is that high level overview. So there's probably a trillion things going through everyone's mind about how does it work and where can it work. We really find the sweet spot to set up the QBR in kind of these core buckets. So rather than, for example, if you do firewalls, listing out 50 different firewalls, what you may want to include is maybe one firewall card with examples of the different types within, or maybe even higher level than that, right? Security and including some firewall stuff. Because remember, the clients don't really care about that. They're not caring about whether it's model A or B. All they care about is if you're delivering that thing that's going to make them money, save them money, or reduce their risk. So in that, if we go to our content area, which we've referenced many times in the past webinars, and we talked about the idea that this here, this section, which is very text heavy, is the content distribution section. So you come up with the templates of stuff. And if you go to this area, you're going to find that those initial sets of planner cards that I'm looking at right now come from a section called planner cards, and they come from one folder. So if anyone's going to take anything away from this, where to start with the QBR, it's really to focus on this folder right here and really develop these different silos based off of your projects, your main services, and everything else. And really think about the productization strategy to build that path for growth. Because again, it's totally cool if you have one service, and that's fine, but why are you running QBRs for them, right? If you run a QBR for someone and you only have one service, what's it for? Is it to prove the value that you're doing your work day over day? You don't need to anymore, right? Because CloudRadial has the automatic reports coming in, it has the tickets and all that kind of stuff. So we're trying to separate a lot of that more mundane, more stuff that can just be viewed whenever they feel like it. And we're trying to give you the angle to be able to talk about whatever you want. So really think about those different buckets of things. Again, whether they're core services, whether they're initiatives, whether they're projects, you can see that even in our sample catalog, it's not just managed services, managed security, it's even things like conference room upgrades, things like that, and always frame them in the context that once you've grown past this level, great, you're now eligible to talk about this and this and this. From a strategy that I've seen from people that are, you know, kind of more advanced in their QBRs, I think the good starting point for a lot of people is to develop that core catalog in one folder, right? You have a core catalog of cards, you push those out to all your clients, and you're working with the same playing card deck, I suppose. So it makes it really easy to run a QBR from client A to client B, because you're not going to be surprised as to what you have to offer, right? It shows up in the same way, and you have something to work with that is consistent. People who are more advanced and they'll kind of build on this is you're going to start to have needs to show certain cards to different people. And that's something that, you know, I'll not dive terribly deep into, but it's very common that people will spin up additional service card packs, right? So they're going to say, I want a new set of planner items, but this set of planner items is only going to apply to healthcare clients, for example. And that's something that can be mega useful because that doesn't limit you to pushing out a giant catalog of a trillion services. It does give you the power to offer a baseline catalog and then additional specific stuff to clients that need it, right? So there's a lot of, again, infinite possibility in how you can take that, but the core point of all this is to develop that first planner set. Once you have that set designed and defined, so let's just say my sample one is done here, we've basically covered the, I hate to talk bad about myself, but the lamest way of doing this, because the whole point of everything else we've been talking about in the webinar is to be better than this. So the baseline level is, yes, you can show them what they have and what you're going to be doing for them and what you've done for them. And that will take care of the majority of problems that people have where they wonder, the clients wonder, well, what am I paying you for? Why does your bill that? You know, why are you billing me for this? Or what happened there? They have that visibility within their portal. But if you want to take it a step up and really make it something special, then that becomes the part where I said it's not a sales game, right? It's a proof point. It's something you take real life statistics and you make them part of your discussion. So a common example I give to a lot of people when I run this kind of discussion is, let's say I'm trying to talk about initiating a security upgrade, right? Let's say we don't cover their security for them, or it's something that maybe I offer an additional package of security, And at its worst case, if I called every one of the people up here on the webinar and told you to meet with me, you'd be pretty pissed that I called you and I just read off a card to you. I guarantee it. I'm wasting your time. I mean, security is important. We're not going to argue that, but you really don't feel the need for it unless you understand why it's going to save you money, make you money, reduce your risk. So the beauty of what we've been doing is that we've been accruing everything we need to have that discussion without running around to a trillion different places. And that's the strength of CloudRadial. It's that it's not tied to, even if putting information in CloudRadial, it's just the aggregate, it's the repository for absolutely everything. So in past webinars, we've talked about, all this other stuff. So we talked about, for example, that CloudRadial has an agent that can be deployed and it picks up information. And we mentioned before that, is this particularly useful? It's like, probably not by itself, right? Because this is similar to like what an RMM would pick up. But the real point of something like this is that we can use this for our compliance policies. So I can start setting rules to this. I can start saying, hey, let me know if this is encrypted. Let me know if this is out of warranty. Let me know if this has OneDrive installed, and so on and so forth. And stuff like that ends up being a very valuable driver towards this conversation we're having now. So I kind of set this up again during the course of the other webinars. When we look at those policies, rather than just the raw data, this starts to become something I can actively use for my discussion. I think at least I have policies. There we go. So whenever I look at, say, the security thing, right? I can do this preparation-wise before I talk to the client, or even during, whatever you prefer. But the idea is that as an account manager, I can sweep the account, and I have certain areas I can hit to look for talking points that prove why I'm asking for, why I'm bringing something up makes sense. I bring this up, I say, hey, here's some security concerns, and it turns out certain people don't have AV, right? That's something important to just from a baseline perspective. So if I click on this, CloudRadial will tell me who are the offenders to my policy. And whenever I click on certain data points in CloudRadial, you're going to see that you're going to have this planner option here. And the whole point of this is so an account manager can sweep and cherry pick the things that make the biggest impact in the conversation. It's not that the account manager has to go through and literally pick every single thing, but if they're trying to have a good conversation and they're trying to make it real to the client, not just say security is important, they're trying to say your security is important and you're not doing right, we can do stuff like this, right? We can show them, hey, there's a problem with the AV on this computer. Maybe this Ricky guy is a CEO. I don't know, right? We might go to the report section and maybe we've got a bunch of our backup reports forward again. And guess what? We've noticed that those are failing every single day because something's going wrong. Not because of you maybe, right? But because the client doesn't want to upgrade or something like that. Same idea. We can add that to the planner and it'll give us a little card to remind there. Even in the, say, the dashboards, which I don't think we've talked about all that much, but these dashboards are a visualization of all the data that is in CloudRadial. They're not something that is strictly like brand new. It really just brings in information from the agent and the policies and Office and the PSA, so it just kind of aggregates that. These are also customizable. But this is the same idea. When I go into a specific section, and let's say I'm trying to talk about the fact that we want to do a security offering, right? We may want to look at the fact that there is terrible security policies going on. So I can see that the CEO and everybody else in here, theoretically, doesn't have any passwords set. Let's throw that on the planner too. So I can start to bring more visual aids with me. So what's happening is, as an account manager, I'm not having to scramble like crazy to go to 1,000 different tools to pick up a bunch of different reports to scramble together to give me a print and present of things that I want to bring up in the QBR. I'm very quickly and very organically able to go to the planner and showcase what I'm trying to do, and I'm able to bring in additional bits of information that speak to that point, right? So it's not just managed security is important because security is important. What do you think? You want to buy? No, right? I'm going to say, I recommend this. Why? Because I'm seeing this. Here's what this is an issue for. It doesn't have to be the entire conversation looking at this chart. It can be an indicator, a litmus test that there's more stuff going on. Same thing with like the policy exception, right? You want to show this, and this becomes your diving point. And this is really what we're talking about when we say CloudRadial is a high-level tool, because many of you use tools and many of you have processes that go far deeper in depth in this, right? You go into budgeting breakdowns, you go into project management statuses. That's really not what this is. This is that easy translation tool. So the client goes, I want to know what's going on. You handle that part. That's okay, but they want to know easily, like a front-facing part to let them know what's happening. So ideally, when you are able to take these different points and show them to the client, you now have the context you need. And in theory, in wonderful, wonderful theory, the client gets the idea to do it, and we can actually end up moving this over here eventually when it's done, right? And you've made your point. Hurrah. I also always make sure to tell people that's not always the case. In fact, frequently it's kind of out of you guys' hands. There's always a struggle to, again, present your case for the QBR as best as possible. You've done an excellent job in framing it. You've made it your own. You've made the proof points, very clear, but you're not, a wizard, right? You can't always make people understand and see it. And obviously there's money concerns and timing and all that kind of stuff. And this is also another thing that I mentioned very heavily, even in the guide that we're going to be sending, is that you have to account for that stuff, because accountability is probably half the battle or more with a lot of these people, right? So you've done your due diligence, you've said everything, and maybe the client comes back and says, nah, I don't care. You're like, okay, well, it's past the sales thing. It's really, as your advisor, as your recommended person that goes to your sees all your technology, I really think we should do this because it's important. You're at risk here, right? This is part of that reduce risk. Let's do it. And they're like, no, we're good. CloudRadial's mechanism to handle that is basically as simple as it gets. As an account manager, again, during the call, after the call, whatever you want to do it, is to go into these individual cards as you need. You can see that they're very simple. They just have a drop down and a couple of things. And I can jot notes down directly within the card, which is the most common play. So a lot of people like to do this, and I want to say, hey, the client said no. And they said to come back in, I don't know, I always use the example June 2029, because that makes it feel like they told me to go away for a very long time. So why is that important? I jotted down the note, and that's cool. I've jotted down the note now because I have accountability. The client knows I brought it up. I know I brought it up. They know they said no to it. We're not going to leave it on the board here because that's going to annoy them, that they're just having this constant reminder, and this will get very busy. So the common play is to keep this board focused on the now, the positive, the happening, the important stuff. Things that have been declined, things that have just been otherwise moved to the table, maybe put on hold, you're going to go ahead and just right click and say move to options. And we can do this with as many things as we want, whether it's the core services or even the one-off things like I just did over here. And what's happening with those is they're going up to this different tab in the planner, and they're being stored under this section that is out of sight, but still available to the client. So again, in 6 months and 3 months, whatever happens, he gets hit with crypto, right? Something happened, or not even that, right? Maybe it's literally an employee stole something, and they went into the computer and it was unprotected. He had a bunch of stuff, non-encrypted drive, got a USB on there, and they could blame you, right? They say, hey, you didn't warn us, you didn't say anything, what's going on? You now have the ability in a non-aggressive way to go, well, we did, and we brought it up, and we have it listed right here that we brought it up, we made it known, we've had an understanding about that. He said no, right? You said no, and it was right there, and it'll even say not considered. So this is our soft decline just to make sure we don't get into like kerfuffles and fights with the clients. But generally speaking, that accountability is super important for people because you've done enough, and you will be doing a lot of stuff where they won't listen to you just because it's out of your hands, right? It's not always that negative. A lot of times it's as easy as just going right click and moving back to list, which is common also for people that just don't have the time to do it right now. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year. Again, CloudRadial is built to focus on a pretty immediate 1 year window, but at the very least you have that stored that you can say, hey, I'll bring this back whenever I need. So that's the rough gist of how to handle proof and understanding why you're recommending certain things. So it's not just to use those core productized cards, it's to use every item at your disposal within the portal that matters to you to actually deliver those points. And I had mentioned during the webinar that the other really, really important part about all this is to allow yourself and them breathing room, right? Which is something I'm terrible at. I speak very quickly, I'm sorry. But breathing room to have a conversation back with you, because the whole point of the QBR is not to just sell stuff. It's not all to just make a consulting call, right? It's also to just understand how they're doing with their business. And it's one of those things that you're not necessarily having to have them talk for hours and hours, but if they have things to say, then let them talk. And again, the whole premise is that if we're hooked up to the PSA and we're pulling in the tickets and you've got the reports and you've got the dashboards and all that kind of stuff, you're not having to go through and do this big conversation where you have to run through all these things. I mean, if they want to do it during the QBR, yeah, you're 2 clicks away from any given thing whenever you feel like, but generally speaking, you don't have to. You're really just focused on this plan. So if you have scheduled a 30-minute meeting and 20 minutes in, you show them what you got, you show them what you're trying to do, you're showing them what concerns you and what you want to do about that, and they give you the all clear or no thanks, you call it early, maybe not, right? Maybe use those last 10, 15 minutes to just say, hey, what's going on with you? And if you plug that on the planner, that gives you a mutual zone, and it makes them actually care, because now it's not just your discussion place, it's their talking place, right? So you go, what's going on with you? And the one I always go to that I think is it actually happened, which is why I always bring it up, is that this is your biggest opportunity to discover the gems. This is stuff that you didn't predict, right? You can think in a bubble all you want about the services that you offer, but how do you know what they want unless you actually have these conversations with clients? You have to keep an ear to the ground as the client's actual needs. So this gives you an opportunity to say, what's going on? The client goes, hey, we had a great month this month. Okay, great. What's happening? We're going to hire 20 new people. Well, that has a lot of repercussions for yourself, right? Because that means new licenses, new devices, new users to support. There's a lot of stuff in that, and that's something that wouldn't technically fall into any of these. You don't have a brand new user card or anything like that ready to go, and this gives you the flexibility to say, cool, let's throw that on the roadmap so we don't forget. And the ability to throw things on here freehand, right, without having them pre-planned from a catalog or picked from anywhere is really important, because this gives you the ability to keep things super easy and super flexible. So if I throw that on here, okay, 20 new hires, right, planning for new hires, I can jot down my notes with the client casually, and it's not this whole thing, right? 20 new laptops needed, cool. We're gonna need, I don't know, maybe we need a whole 9 new licenses for whatever tool, and we're gonna need some desk moves, and we're gonna need this, that, the other. And you can even throw attachments and stuff on here to make it something that you can add to. So if you've got quotes later on, they wanna be able to come to one place to see it, you've got a friendly area that they can kind of share all this information. So this whole process, right, let's say it's in Q2, I can just drag it, but this whole process is intended to be really easy, because now you've given the client a reason to care about going back to the planner, because again, it's not just a sales board, it's not an explanation board, it's a place where they see the progress of their own stuff at a high level. So what happens now is, if you want to take this a step further, what you can also do, rather than just jotting down the notes, and this is something you could also see in the background of these existing cards that I haven't mentioned yet, is that you can add a little bit more detail to them, i.e. price and a little bit of project management. Now, I'm firm about this, right? I wouldn't call this a project management board or a budgeting board, but that little bit of both is really good for that high level explanation. So you can see on this managed security card or the HIPAA card that there is a monthly and a project amount, and it does have a priority and status, and that is indicative of those additional little features. So when you click on a card, if you want to take it a step further, you can edit that card, and rather just writing the notes plain and simple, if you pop into the settings of the cards, you have that ability to say, hey, I want to show a price. And maybe I don't quite know, I don't want them coming back and pointing to the planner and saying, you said it was going to cost $1,000 per laptop. I don't know, I'm just spitballing because I'm doing this live with you guys. I haven't had a chance to talk to the distributor, I don't know. So let's throw an estimated on there. And really going through this stuff is not terribly difficult, because this isn't tied to any given thing just yet, right? This isn't tied to some project management thing. This isn't Microsoft Planner. This isn't anything else. This is a standalone thing that is purely meant to be that springboard into the conversation back and forth. So if you want to go through this and go, hey, I want to show them that it actually has been approved, or maybe it's in progress and it's a high priority item for us, and I don't know, it's 80% complete with this project and we're going to be done here. You can spend all your time you want going through this and dressing this up to the nines if you want, and even throwing pricing on there. 20 new hires, we're going to need 20 project units at, let's call it $1,000 per person. So you can see that there's lots of additional fields and lots of different stuff in here that you could fill out. And this really what it's going to do is it's going to make the card look a lot different to hopefully be more helpful. So the client isn't just coming over here to see the idea of what's happening, but they also have the ability to understand more or less how to budget. So you're giving them a rough estimate going, yeah, remember, we're going to spend about 20 grand on those new hires in Q2, or maybe we're going to shift that off to Q3 if we have to. And CloudRadial will do its best to keep up with you. Even in the Teams training course I had written here, I did this earlier, and it'll actually tally stuff up for you. So it'll keep the top of the column active. If you have project stuff as well, it'll show you, hey, there's a bulk sum, plus there's going to be a recurring sum. And when you drag things over to complete it, ultimately, it'll even show the clients, like, remember, your bill is this much because we're doing this. Remember, it's doing this. So it gives them an easy visual way to understand and remember why their price is and their bill is what it is. So to that end, I think this is, you know, a good high level overview of where we're kind of taking this and the high level strategy. I had mentioned at the very beginning that this is not a complete thing, because many people, again, some people want to have something that is very basic. They don't want to do any of this. They want to just start off with a couple of core services. Other people want to do exactly this to develop their full thing. And other people still already use other VCIO tools, and that's okay. Like, again, CloudRadial is not built to be the end all be all for absolutely everything. It's meant to be this solid thing that covers all the bases, but if you need to go and overreach into other stuff, it still works in the context of your client portal. We still want that to be the funnel that goes all the way down, and they have everything they need there. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Because if I were to go kind of step back for a moment and talk about a more realistic version of the QBR, a lot of people ask about reports, something deliverable, something that kind of gives them something to look at and reference. And I think having a planner like this within their tenant is really useful because they have the ability to see it. It's live, it's easily manipulable. I think that's awesome. But what this is really bad at is showing them how they've grown over time, because the issue with something like this is that as things move over, as things get done, it's really hard for clients to remember where they were a year ago versus where they are now. So it's something that we're very cognizant about, and we've handled, I think, in a very simple way, in that we have reports. We have a report that you can run. And ideally what you would do is when you were to actually run a QBR or any kind of meeting for a client, what I would actually do is I would go to my client list under partner clients, and I would pick that client that needs to have that report run. So in this case, we were doing it for the LOMG, so I'll click LOMG. And as I'm preparing for this, I can go ahead and click on the reports button over here, and you'll see that there is this button to generate a report. Now, if you haven't done this before, you're going to see nothing here and it won't say anything. Mine says monthly and policy report. What happens with CloudRadial is that you're allowed to build different types of reports, different layouts of what you want in your report in general. And if you look, if you click on the button that says need a report, click here, you're allowed to create them very similar to the feature sets that we talked about, in that you tick on and off what you want in that report or what you don't want, so you can build different versions. And this is particularly useful because, again, for some QBRs, you might be doing a full report and you want absolutely everything included that the portal has to offer in a nice PDF. Other times you're doing a light touch. Maybe they want just an official report on their licenses without going to the portal. You want to store that somewhere, or on their account plan or their infrastructure review, right? You can kind of pick and choose different types of reports in that sense. But when I go to it, the general idea is that I would be ready to go. I'm going to run my report. I'm going to run my monthly report or QBR report or whatever we want to call this. And CloudRadial will generate that actual presentable, deliverable PDF for me, and it'll be branded to you. So it's currently doing that. You see a little red line running across, and depending on how much stuff you have, it can be pretty big. So here's this LOMG report. You can see it's got my logo, it's got the date, it's got a branded background. As I go through, it has all of the stuff listed on here that I've defined in that report layout. So it has the users I manage, it has the status of their policies, it has the status of where their planner's at, including like a little bit of the budget breakdown and stuff. It has a lot of the details that are really everything they could get by clicking around, but the most important part is that time and date snapshots it, which means that you now have concrete proof that they were at a certain place at a certain time. So when it comes to actually running the QBR, as I was kind of building this whole thing, the idea for us is that you have that in the pocket. You may not lead with that, you may not even bring that up, and that's okay, because our goal is for you to be able to run this conversation as smoothly and as quickly as possible to prepare for. So you're not having to spend hours and days and weeks preparing for these things. You're able to throw the high level ideas in here. Now, once the meeting wraps up, once you've had your conversation, once you've ran your PowerPoint, once you've gotten your other tool reports, right, keeping it open to whatever you think is best for your QBR, our intention is that once you're finished, that's where this last meetings option tab comes in. And this, as simply as possible, is a way that you can come in and log not just what happened on a card by card basis, not just what happened with the security initiative or the team's training course, but the overall meeting. So you come in here and you say, hey, we've completed the meeting, right? Maybe we want to put notes for an upcoming one, but generally speaking, we had our May QBR. It happened today in this case, right? The 6th. And then I'm going to say we did this one with Ricky. And what did we talk about today? Well, we talked about the 20 new hires, and we talked about declining the security stuff, and we talked about, so on and so forth. And obviously I'm doing this on a webinar, so I'm being skimpy on the details, but you get the idea. And this is also where you throw attachments in, which again speaks to that agnosticism of solutions, which means that anything that generates value is still a place that is viable to throw details in here. So as I go in here, maybe I want to throw in my monthly report and attach it to this, or from any other tool. So now what you're really doing for the client is you're putting yourself in their shoes. When you walk away from that meeting, not only does the client have something they can reference to remember what we talked about and how the plan goes and what we're kind of looking at budgeting wise at a high level, easy to understand, but they also have a breakdown of what we talked about and a quick summary view and any other reports you want. So if you need to get that back, they'll have the ability to download it, read it, and they'll be good to go. So this is super powerful. But the trick to these QBRs, right, that I've been talking about for the past 45 minutes, for you guys isn't just doing them. That's a huge part of the battle, don't get me wrong, but it's how easily can you do them consistently? Can you do them repeatedly? If they're a huge pain to prep for, if they're a huge pain to deliver, if they require hours and hours, there's no wonder people don't do these as often as they should, because how can you? You're busy. You got a bunch of stuff, and clients vary very, very much. Literally, they vary very much. So it's really hard to kind of get everybody in one bucket, in one silo. And that's really the core mechanic of CloudRadial we're trying to emphasize today, is that noted, we did all this stuff for LOMG, this company right here, but if right after this webinar, I have to go do this exact same conversation with Willoughby Council, and I got 14 minutes to prep, am I screwed? No, because now what happens is if I want to go do that, I'm going to go pop into their tenant, and guess what? What I can do now, what I want you guys to be aware of, is the whole process here is that even though everybody can exist as their own kind of individual tenant, these people have a different feature set entirely. You can see that they've got less options, they've got some things here, they may have different reports going into their folders here and there. You've got a bunch of different options to pick from, but you're still fundamentally running it in the same frame, and that's really the key, is to build those processes. So Willoughby Council's planner looks different than LOMG's planner, which may look different from the next guy's planner, They may have different cards, they may have different reports, they may have different policies, but that doesn't matter so much because your process to run it is the same. You look for points, you bring it over here, and you're able to run that report. And same thing, you throw in the meeting notes and you've kind of got a winning formula, which means that now we've taken away, hopefully, the pain of setting up for this QBR. So delivering one is really as easy as soon as you find something you want to talk about, as soon as you have an initiative, and as soon as you have time for them to tell you about their business, you can log this in here and have something ready to go. For you guys, that's going to be huge, because this structure is something a lot of people struggle with. Really what we're trying to get you guys to do, right? The client is inherently getting value out of this because now they have a clear-cut correlation between what you're offering, why it's going to save them money, why it's going to make them money, why it's going to reduce their risk. There's the accountability baked in there. And from your perspective, if I want to start analyzing my clients, which is very common for MSPs to want to do, I can do that too. Because keep in mind that every client is now, again, theoretically, even though they're all kind of different, they're running in the same structure. So if I want to compare LOMG to Willoughby to my next 100 clients, because I'm running in the same structure, I can do that, not by flip-flopping between the tabs like I'm doing, but once we've kind of run this, we kind of get our structure down of how you want to run the QBR. From your perspective, you can go to your partner dropdown, which is like your control panel, and you can go to your planner, your partner planner, which is the global planner. You can see all the planner cards for every client in one area, which is messy, honestly, right? So you see here, you've got the ones we added freehand, you've got the ones coming from the catalog for LOMG, Ricky's shop, Jeff's, Willoughby's, right? You've got the numbers attached to them, you've got the status and all that kind of stuff too. And the reason that we aggregate all this information is so you can review this on your schedule. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a quarter, once every 6 months. As you go through this, we can pull a sales matrix whenever you feel like, and what that's going to do is it's going to give us an Excel file that makes it really easy to visualize who has what. And a lot of people do this somewhat manually, but look at how easy this is to read, right? You have your clients, you have your services, and really easily you can quickly distinguish who has what and who doesn't have what. And if they do have stuff, when is it going to be done? This is really important for your growth as an MSP and your client's growth, because this helps you understand, hey, this client right here, pretty good. Every time we have that conversation, things land with them. They understand it, they want to do it. This is a client that is worth a lot to us, versus maybe Jeff's company is really difficult. Like, we got them on one thing, maybe we got them on the laptop refresh project here and there, but a classic case of it's just not working, right? They don't want to buy anything, they're either too cheap, or maybe they don't have the money, or they don't have the time. Like, you know, there could be many reasons, but a lot of MSPs struggle with understanding who is the best fit. And short of that, the other thing too is not just to blame it on the client, but also on how you can improve your own service stack, how you can add more services, how you can stay fresh and up to date with what you offer. Case in point, look at something like the server backup. Rather than looking at it by company, we can look at it by solution and go, hey, we've been offering this service forever. We bring it up every time. No one seems to bite. Why is that? Is that a marketing problem? Is that a price problem? Is that just something that people aren't aware that they need? So you can't really get this type of thinking if you don't see this right in front of you. And again, many of you guys do this anyways, right? You have account managers, you have people, you have somebody trying to keep track of who has what and who doesn't have what, for upsell opportunities, for just general covering your bases. And this thing is automatically doing it for you, just in the nature of keeping those cards up to date. So it's something that ends up being very, very powerful for you to just work regularly, right? This area entirely is not something you need to keep track of at all. It's just something that aggregates that data for you. So, right, there's a lot of stuff to this planner and a lot of stuff to the QBR, but I think the core takeaway from this is, remember, it's all about how you present that initial set, right? Thinking about these core cards is your baseline. It's thinking about how that's important, and that's going to help start that discussion to say, we have delivered what we promised at the very beginning. We have made you more efficient. We have made you more secure. We've done all these different things, and I've proven that to you, and I prove that to you every day. I prove that to you by showing you all of the reports I have. I prove that to you by showing you your policies are green across the board because the stuff we manage, and the stuff that we don't is the stuff that we want you to be aware of. Or maybe we've run you through some assessments and we've seen the fact that you're able to be compliant in some areas and non-compliant in others. And I know we haven't talked about this very much during the series, but this is another very popular one for discussions during the QBR, because of course this one dives into the whole nitty-gritty of what should we be doing versus what we should not be doing, what's non-compliant. But the core concept is the same. You've given them a way to see every single thing you're grading them on and what you're working on in the background. So when they come to that planner, you have as much transparency as possible. And that's why this is the ultimate end point of what we're trying to reach with CloudRadial, because the entirety of the webinars we've been doing have started from the very top and we've come down to the very bottom because we want to aggregate that experience to make sense from the entire life cycle, right? So hopefully this is going to give you the oomph to take it to build that decision. And once the QBR is over and you got that gap between this meeting and the next meeting, that's when we're going to toggle back between this and the manage, right? That's when we go back and go, okay, cool, we're going to let this stew, we're going to let you think. In the meantime, we're going to keep adding value. We're going to keep building courses. We're going to keep adding tickets. We're going to keep adding line of business apps. And that's how you keep the relationship fresh. This is a big thing for a lot of people because it's not always tied to the services you sell. It's not over if you don't have anything to say here. It's something that you can keep the conversation going, and it makes a lot of sense to just keep it visible. So that is my final spiel, I think, on the grow part of CloudRadial. Obviously, there is a lot of different theories, a lot of different tools, a lot of different methodologies, and a lot of different discussions that are going to happen anyways. But Safi, let me know if there's some questions there, because I know I talked for a very, very long time, as usual.
No, it's actually quiet this morning, so I think you've covered it really well. I want to remind everybody that inside of your portals, and since you're driving, Ricky, you can go to, I want to show partner account, and over here on the right-hand side, you'll see the land onboard, manage, and grow. Download the, the actual
the
guides. And then if as you click on that download button, go ahead and click it. We're also putting, if you scroll down a little bit, we're putting a link to the webinars. And so if you've missed anything, everything is going to be on this page. And just know, and I think most of you do know, that we host this on YouTube at our YouTube channel, but to make it easy for you to get to and to find, it is visible inside your portal. And I really think that's about it, Ricky. Did a great job, as always.
Well, thank you. But yeah, I think guys, anyone paying attention to this or future people paying attention, it's worth, even if you don't have the time to necessarily watch a bunch of webinars, it's worth picking up these PDFs because they say pretty much everything we've covered. Obviously, there's practical examples, but I think the theory is pretty inarguable. I mean, it's not something that we're saying anything controversial necessarily with CloudRadial. I think the whole strategy of putting something in front of your clients that just speaks to them, that they can grow with, they can evolve with, and that actually has their IP and your IP mixed in, is just good. So my final wrap-up thought, I think, for the entirety of the LOMG series is give CloudRadial, or even something like CloudRadial, a shot. Really build that entirety of your client process out and see how that works. Because I think once you have something like this, where you're able to design this and show the client that you have a plan for them, you have a place for them, you have every single thing kind of thought out, and you make the experience easy, it's really hard to go back to nebulousness. It's really hard to go back to, trust us, we're going to do this, and we're going to send you reports, and we're going to email in a ticket. I mean, this is just a superior class of thinking in general, right? Tools aside, I'm just telling you guys as pure, I guess, human being, as a non-technical person, because I don't really know much. This is the kind of stuff that makes the difference for people that are using their day-to-day stuff and working with you, I think. But yeah, and in any case, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us for all of these different webinars. And of course, as we know, we're going to be hosting more anyways, but thank you very much, guys. And I guess I'll catch you either in training or somewhere else.
Yeah, and then also know that we're going to be at the ASCII conference in a couple of weeks. I don't know the exact dates because it's just not like top of mind right now, but it's in, I think do you know, Ricky, when we're going to be at ASCII? We're going to be in Houston, and Ricky and Jeff and Seth will be there. And so if you're there, please come see us.
Yes.
And we'll have the actual LOMG information bound for you, so you can pick up a hard copy, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah. It's going to be the 20th of May, Kathy, it looks like.
Okay, May 20th. Okay. All right.
You.
And so that's in Houston. So, you know, if you're there, we'd love to see you. And thanks for coming today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Again, have a good rest of your day.